Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Beth Lewis. I am an educator, parent of two, director of Save Our Schools Arizona. We come to you at an extremely critical moment in our state. The Arizona legislature is currently sitting on a record $5.3 billion surplus. With this funding, they could fund our classrooms. This is what Arizona voters have repeatedly said that they want. With this funding, we could have teacher pay increases, resources for students, extracurriculars, and more. But funding for students in Arizona has been stripped bare. Our students do not have funding for aids, programs, anything beyond the barest of bones. And the poorest schools and poorest students suffer the most. This year, states across the nation have used their surpluses to fund massive teacher pay increases from Georgia to Alabama, Mississippi, and New Mexico. Arizona teachers are leaving for other states and doubling their pay for the same job. Meanwhile, our lawmakers are outright refusing to fund Arizona schools. Last week, Governor Ducey and Republican leadership in the House and Senate approved a budget proposal that doesn't even meet inflation for K-12 schools and would strip $330 million from local schools via tax cuts. Instead of using the record $5.3 billion surplus for Arizona students, lawmakers are instead doubling down on private school vouchers, which Arizona voters have overwhelmingly rejected. Republican lawmakers are obsessively trying to pacify national donors like Betsy DeVos by ballooning these vouchers again. These are entitlement programs for the wealthy with no accountability for taxpayers. Special interests are crawling all over this legislature, pushing more private school vouchers at the behest of national donors and for-profit school operators that simply want to line their pockets. The entire budget is stalled because of these special interests' myopic obsession with unaccountable vouchers. This budget could have been a record-setting success that would help families all across Arizona if we had a legislature that cared. If we had a legislature that cared about Arizona kids and families. But we don't. At Save Our Schools Arizona, we will work for the next 146 days to ensure that Arizona will elect lawmakers that will prioritize and fund public schools on November 8th and stop handouts for the wealthy and private school voucher subsidies.
Hi, good morning. I'm Patrick Brown. I'm an educator, but more importantly, I'm a parent. And I'm a longtime resident of South Phoenix, and the issues affecting our schools, this budget crisis as it pertains to our schools, where I live, my community is ground zero for all of the bad that comes from poorly funded schools, from poorly compensated educators. The thing is, something I learned in college a long time ago was that a saying from my economics professor, and he said that you can always tell the values of a society based on what the budget looks like. And when you look at the budget in Arizona, when it comes to school funding, it sends them a clear message that Arizona does not care about our kids, does not care about public education, does not care about our communities. Something that I saw on Twitter as I was running over here for this press conference, I'm going to give credit to Representative Sweeber because these are her words, but I think this is something that's really important, needs to be reminded. And she said, Arizona can increase funding by $900 million without raising taxes, thus lowering class sizes, raising teacher pay, and improve educational outcomes. Those are things in a community like mine, things that my kids that are in school right now, the future leaders, the future, folks of our society could use right now, having those resources. And it's something we can do without upsetting the economic balance of Arizona or the concerns of higher taxes, things like that. When I hear the message about school vouchers, when I hear about the private school funding with public tax dollars, what I hear, what I see as a parent is an easy shell game. It's a bait and switch. And the reality is that it's not equitable. The fact of the matter is that a huge majority of kids in Arizona are going to public schools. What a parent wants to do, what a family wants to do when it comes to their child's education, that is their choice, and I will not argue what a parent's individual choice. However, when it comes to publicly funded tax dollars, when it comes to the money that taxpayers are putting into a system for public good, then these vouchers are not are not something that we can have, is not something that's supportive of our education system, and it doesn't benefit all Arizona. It only benefits a small percentage of people. In communities like mine, in South Phoenix, we are, we need more resources. We need our schools to have all the things that, allow kids to meet their educational goals. We need teachers who are compensated for the many, many hours of work that they do. And the thing is, we have the money. This is not trying to find the money from somewhere else. We have the funds to do this. So as a parent, as an educator, as a person who cares about this community, I ask the state legislature to do the right thing. Fund public education, raise teacher salaries, provide those resources, because the thing is, my children today are the adults and contributors to society tomorrow, and I guarantee you they're watching, they're paying attention, and they will be future voters, and they will remember what they experienced as children when they're adults. Thank you.
Buenos dias. Hello, everyone. My name is Rodrigo Palacios, and I am a father of 3 school-aged children. I'm also an educator of 20 years. We're here today because we're gravely concerned with the games being played in the buildings just behind you. There's no denying that our public schools are critical assets to our communities. We need our schools and teachers to have the resources that they need to successfully prepare our kids for a 21st century competitive workforce. With a record $5.3 billion surplus, I cannot understand why Arizona's legislative leadership, why Republicans are continuing to refuse to fund our kids' schools. As a dad, as an educator, I want to ensure that my children and all children have access to fully funded public schools that include school counselors, special education instructors, and other deeply needed resources. Especially in light of the last 2 years, we know how desperately needed our children have for social emotional resources. We must prioritize fully funding our public education system. ESA voucher expansion is not the way to do it. Siphoning desperately needed funds away from public schools by funding a voter-opposed ESA voucher expansion program, which I might add was defeated resoundingly in 2018, flies in the face of the will of Arizonans and the needs of our families. It's disappointing, it's shameful that our legislative majority party has been seemingly co-opted by privatizers and profiteers at the expense of our children. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Irvanda Montero. I come to you today as a recent graduate of our public school system here in Arizona, a current student at Arizona State University, and a locally elected school board member in Tempe, Arizona. Meaning, I have seen and felt the direct impact of the underfunding of our public schools from many different angles. My entire journey through our public education system has been defined by the continued disinvestment in the future of our children and students across the state. From aging and crumbling facilities, outdated and torn up textbooks, overcrowded classrooms, recruitment and retention of qualified teachers, cutting programs in the fine arts, the lack of proper mental health resources, and the ever-increasing demands on teachers to fill these gaps, and so much more, the cost of these decisions is at the expense of our students and staff. When you continue to cut funding for our public schools, you cut career options and passions for thousands of students across the state. Our public schools are the foundation of our democracy. But to countless students, their schools are so much more than that. To them, it is another home. A place not only to learn, but to grow, to thrive, to find themselves, to build lifelong relationships, and to seek much needed resources. And rather than uplifting that vision, the legislature is going to consider one of the largest ever expansions of private school vouchers, which not only siphons millions of dollars from the very schools that need it the most, but will continue to be a driving force of inequality in our education system, leaving our students in the most need in the dust. But don't take it from us. Take it from the millions of voters that soundly rejected the expansion of these vouchers previously. In fact, recently we learned that 66% of Arizonans believe that schools are underfunded, and even more, 78% believe that teacher salaries are too low. Arizonans overwhelmingly support increasing funding for our public schools, supporting our students and our staff. A fully funded and equitable education is not something that families should have to fight for year after year. It is something that all students should have and be afforded to. Having the proper funding could be life-changing to countless of students, from ensuring every school has quality teachers in the classroom, giving every classroom up-to-date and quality learning resources, increasing opportunities for career and technical education, increasing vital mental health supports and more counselors and social workers, and so much more. Some may not think that students understand what happens up here, but trust me, we not only understand it, we notice, we feel it, and we live it every single day. I have the opportunity to be up here today because I had public school teachers who took a chance on me, who believed in me and invested in me. And today, I'm simply asking that we have a state that believes in them and invests back in them. Thank you.
AV issue. Sorry. No worries. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. We now come to the nerd portion of the program. My name is Chris Cotterman. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Arizona School Boards Association. The Arizona School Boards Association, made up of school districts in Arizona headed by locally elected governing boards, represents a variety of interests and as broad and varied as our state. Rural, urban, suburban, racially and ethnically diverse, from 50,000 plus students down to less than 50 students. All of them have unique needs, but all of those needs are served by the same policy goal: a school funding formula that provides adequate support for schools to meet the instructional needs of their specific students. We don't have that today. What we have is a formula that's very efficient at making sure every district, to some degree, shares in the pain of making trade-offs between paying teachers and hiring bus drivers, between reducing class sizes and adding counselors. As a colleague of mine likes to say, the plumbing is pretty good, but the water pressure is terrible. We have the opportunity to change that before us today, but it's not just an opportunity. Arizona's model of operation demands it. Whether anyone here agrees with the premise or not, the economy of this state is built for growth. Arizona essentially runs on people buying stuff and new individuals moving here to pay our lower income tax rates. That's been the plan for nearly 20 years that I've worked in this business. How many times in the last 2 decades have we heard tax cuts will bring more revenue? Well, if you're inclined to believe that, then the only logical conclusion is that the revenue has arrived. We're sitting on a $5 billion surplus and a $1+ billion rainy day fund. If you're a tax cuts increase revenue type of person, this is your Super Bowl. The problem is, the tax cuts increase revenue people don't seem to be able to agree on how to bring themselves to spend the revenue. So we have a suggestion. You have to keep the growth machine going. In order to keep people and companies interested in Arizona, we've got to invest in areas that will continue to make us more attractive. Things like schools. Good schools make our state more attractive to both employers and employees. Good schools produce students ready for college and the workforce, and give parents peace of mind that they aren't disadvantaging their children by moving here. Don't take my word for it. Noted tax and spender Bob Robb at the Arizona Republic said essentially the same thing in his Republic column on June 8th. The voters seem to agree as well. We heard the stats. 66% of likely voters, majority of whom are Republicans and independents, by the way, believe that schools are underfunded, and 78% believe that teachers should be paid more. Spending a large amount of money on K-12 education is not a politically risky proposition. The opportunity is here. It even has broad bipartisan support, we're told. The legislature, perhaps more than any other in recent memory, has a chance to do something historic for Arizona. The only question left is whether they'll seize it or allow it to slip away. Thank you.
Here we find ourselves again,
another legislative battle over the budget, and another opportunity for lawmakers to completely disregard the needs of rural students. My name is Niki. I'm a rural parent and the statewide outreach director for Save Our Schools Arizona, and I am tired of being ignored. My family lives in rural Arizona. To be more specific, we live in Yavapai County, Legislative District 1, home of Senate President Karen Fann, and I feel completely unrepresented as a mother of children attending Arizona's rural schools. When I started this journey to find ways to correct the neglect of our public schools, my youngest child was 3. She met with her legislative representatives before she could even say legislative representative. My daughter is set to enter 3rd grade next year, and nothing has changed for her. The experience she will have in our rural public schools remain way under any standard I hold for her. She will be in class sizes that are the largest in the nation. She will experience massive teacher turnover and face multiple long-term subs before she graduates. Her classroom supplies will be largely supplied by educators and parents in place of appropriate funding from this legislative body. She will do all of this on a campus in desperate need of capital funding. If her experience is anything like what her older siblings received, she will see multiple leaking roofs, broken AC and heat, a lack of appropriate curriculum, and a general disregard for the repairs needed in her classroom. While it's fair to say that every public school in this state is in need of investments by this legislative body, we've got to be really clear here that some communities will be hit harder than others. They are being intentionally hurt, and the people we elect to address this are ignoring them. The needs of rural Arizona are different, but they are also very much the same. My kids need school buildings that are safe and sanitary, buildings that are maintained appropriately. This is harder when your campus is aging in rural Arizona. We have a school in my district that is over 100 years old. Vouchers double down on this problem. They create a system of have and have-nots that leave the poorest schools and rural schools in the dust. They strip massive amounts of funding from our system with no accountability for taxpayer dollars and no accountability to us parents who want to know how our kids are doing. This is not what our rural communities need. We need funding in our public schools. At some point, lawmakers need to come to the table with support for the areas from where they traveled. They need to fight for the communities they leave to do this work. They need to be a voice for the students they represent and stand up to the chaos that has become Arizona politics. Our kids cannot continue to wait. This state has failed my oldest daughter. She's already graduated from this mess lawmakers created and moved out of this state. Are you really prepared to do the exact same thing to my youngest child? I am calling on this legislature to make substantial investments in my children's school. I am asking you to at least attempt to address some of the gaping holes in the funding of our schools that you yourselves created.
Good morning. I'm Marisol Garcia. I am a mother, an educator, and the president-elect of the Arizona Education Association. For weeks and months, we have been down here asking the legislature to make a budget that is focused on education. For years, since my son was in kindergarten, we have heard we do not have the funds to properly fund our education system. But we have them now. There's no more excuses. The money is available. A couple weeks ago when we presented, the AEA presented the educators' budget, it specifically asked to invest in things that parents, educators, and students are not only expecting but demanding in order to have a healthy school system. It's not much. We're talking about funding CTE programs. We're talking about funding special education programs. But most importantly and most critical right now, we need to fund a system that includes educators' salaries so that they are able to stay in this state. Over the last few days, we have heard from our educators who are in buildings right now with empty classrooms, unable to hire new professionals. School districts are looking to go out of the country to hire folks to come in and teach in Arizona. It used to be the reverse. Educators used to want to leave and go and experience different cultures and have a job over there. Now we are asking folks from other countries to come here. Why are we doing that? Because educators will not stay in a state that cannot pay them a livable wage. The educators' budget has been co-signed by parents and by legislators throughout the state who know that this is a priority, not just for them, but for the communities that they serve. It is long overdue, and it is, quite frankly, actionable today. The last thing that parents and families are thinking about at the kitchen table in underserved communities is vouchers. It is not a priority. I live and work in these communities. This is not a priority. Our priority in these communities is ensuring that our students have a safe and funded school to send our children to. And more importantly, we're worried about the larger economic issues facing these communities. Working standards, housing, all of these issues are what go into make sure impact healthy schools. So here we are with that money. I have had direct experience with vouchers in a Title I school district, and I'm going to tell you it was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. Folks from the voucher company, the privatization effort, went door to door, trailer to trailer, convincing families to leave their public schools in order to receive an ATM card with almost $6,000 on it. And families who had never seen money like that in their lives got roped into this scheme. They had no idea that that meant that they would have to go and withdraw from their favorite public school, A, B, and that they would have to figure out how to pay for the rest of that school if there was a school in these communities, which there is not. So I had a mother and a really amazing student come in the middle of summer to tell me, Ms. Garcia, what does this paper mean? And I had to explain to them that I had to withdraw them from their school and that they would have to figure out how to get to that school, how to apply to that school if they got in, that they would have to be able to take care of their own food, which for most of my students is not something they'd have to worry about, but they could not come back to this school. They would have to say goodbye to all their friends and family. There were no schools in the area for them to do that. They turned back in the money and they came back to our school. This is what's going to happen. The current piece of legislation that is in front of the legislature is being discussed by the one party that is making all these decisions, includes $200 million of ongoing funding and $200 million that is one-time funding. However, the bill that is going to be heard today is going to say we're not even going to give you that money until 2024 unless the vouchers gets passed. The hypocrisy is just dripping. We need the money in our classrooms now. We need the money in our communities now. Our teachers, our families, our students are done with it. We will continue to be here to watch every single vote, to hear every single discussion, but we know right now that the folks who are proposing this piece of legislation are not working for Arizona voters. They're not working for Arizona families. They're working for out-of-state donors who are intent in making money off of students like my son. Thank you.